She flinched when I hugged her goodbye. That's when I saw it. An angry red burn snaking up her little arm. Blisters. Fresh. Too clean to be a kitchen accident. When I asked what happened, she looked at the floor and whispered one word: cooking. But it got worse. The moment I called 911, my entire family turned on me. Called me a liar, an attention seeker. Said I wanted custody. They made me the villain for trying to protect her. But I'm a contractor. I know how to document every fault line. And if they thought I'd back down, they picked the wrong damn uncle. I have 7 days to prove the truth, or lose everything. And the clock's already ticking. My name is Michael Carver, and I'm 45 years old. Each Saturday morning, I run my contracting business from a workshop that smells of fresh-cut pine and motor oil. My sister Rachel and her live-in boyfriend Steve treat me like an unwanted guest at family gatherings, their whispers following me from room to room. I built this business on 20 years of precise measurements and level foundations, keeping my tools organized in drawers that click shut with satisfying certainty. My old friend Mark, a veteran firefighter, shares my belief that evidence tells its own story if you know where to look. I've made my living building things to last. But lately, the cracks in my family's facade are too deep to patch over. Between Rachel's nervous glances and Steve's bouncer stance, something's not adding up. But let me start from the beginning. Last Saturday started like any other. Sun climbing over my workshop, coffee steaming beside my invoice stack, and Emily's excited voice chirping through my phone about ice cream. That's my niece, 5 years old and already mastering the art of wrapping her uncle around her finger. You know how it goes. 1 minute you're planning to organize receipts, the next you're pulling your truck into Rachel's driveway to pick up a giggling kindergartner. "Uncle Mike, can we get chocolate?" Emily bounced on her toes while I helped her into her jacket. Rachel was out shopping, and Steve gave me that usual bouncer stare from the doorway before retreating inside without a word. What kind of uncle would I be if we got anything else? I winked, leading her to my truck. The familiar scent of leather and pine air freshener welcomed us as I lifted her into the booster seat I kept just for her visits. You ever notice how kids can make the simplest things feel magical? Emily treated that ice cream parlor like it was Disney World. Her eyes lit up at the sprinkle display, and she pressed her nose against the glass case like she was studying precious gems. We settled into our usual booth by the window, sunlight dancing across the chrome table trim. "Uncle Mike, watch!" She balanced her spoon on her nose, chocolate already decorating the corners of her smile. That's when everything shifted, when she reached for her napkin, and her sleeve rode up. The burn mark ran angry and red along her forearm, blisters forming a distinct oval pattern that made my stomach clench. 15 years of installing kitchen appliances had taught me what different burns looked like. This wasn't some random splash from a pot or pan. "Hey, sweetie." I kept my voice soft, casual. "What happened to your arm?" The change was instant. Her spoon clattered to the table, and she tugged her sleeve down. "Cooking," she mumbled, suddenly fascinated by the floor mat. My mind raced back through recent family gatherings, the hushed conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. Rachel's nervous glances, Steve's territorial stance. Those weren't just awkward family dynamics. They were warning signs I'd missed. I helped Emily clean up, maintaining a calm I didn't feel. She'd gone quiet, that special kind of quiet kids get when they're carrying something too heavy for their shoulders. The drive back felt longer than usual. Every stoplight a chance to study that burn in my side mirror. The edges were too defined, too perfectly shaped. I'd seen enough kitchen accidents to know this wasn't one. The whole way, I rehearsed opening lines. "Rachel, we need to talk," sounded too confrontational. I noticed something concerning felt too weak. My palms were damp on the steering wheel, remembering how quick my sister was to dismiss my dramatic concerns in the past. Emily hummed softly to the radio as we pulled into her driveway, but her usual skip was missing when I helped her down from the truck. Each step to the front door felt like walking through cement, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pressed the doorbell, trying to ground myself in its familiar chime. Rachel opened the door, surprise flickering across her face when she saw my expression. "You're back early." I kept my voice steady, professional, the same tone I used when explaining foundation problems to clients. "Rachel, we need to discuss something." I gestured to Emily's arm. "How did this happen?" The sequence played out exactly as I'd dreaded. Rachel's face hardened, her shoulders squared. But now I could see it wasn't just defensiveness. There was fear there too, quick as a shadow, but just as real. "What happened?" I repeated, softer this time, giving her space to tell me the truth. Emily pressed against my leg, and in that moment, I knew this wasn't just about a burn anymore. This was about everything those family whispers had been trying to tell me. Rachel led us into the kitchen, and I caught Emily's slight hesitation at the threshold. Steam fogged the window over the sink where a pan sat hissing on the burner. Empty, but for a few drops of water dancing across its surface. The sound took me back to countless family dinners. But something felt off about this one. Like a frame hanging crooked on a wall. It was just a cooking accident, Mike. Rachel waved toward a pot on the back burner. We were making pasta yesterday, and she got too close. She wouldn't meet my eyes, keeping busy wiping already clean counters. Emily had drifted behind a kitchen chair, clutching her stuffed rabbit, the one I'd given her last Christmas, like a shield. The way she pressed its worn ear against her chin reminded me of how my own daughter used to self-soothe when things got tense. Funny how those old dad instincts kick in right when you need them most. I studied the burn again, keeping my expression neutral. 15 years of installing kitchen appliances teaches you a thing or two about burns. This one had defined edges, almost geometric, and the blisters were fresh, maybe hours old, not yesterday's news. The healing timeline was all wrong, like trying to match a blueprint to the wrong house. Rachel, I kept my voice steady, the same tone I use when explaining to clients why their dream renovation needs to wait for proper permits. That burn's too fresh to be from yesterday. You know that moment when the air gets thick enough to cut with a knife? That's what hit us right then. I could see Emily shrinking smaller behind that chair, and I remembered what Mark always said about interviewing scared kids. They clam up fastest when adults start fighting. A floorboard creaked in the hallway, and there was Steve, leaning against the doorframe like some cut-rate bouncer at a small-town bar. His eyes had that narrow look, the one that always made me wonder what he was guarding against, or hiding from. Something wrong here? He asked, but it wasn't really a question. Rachel's shoulders tensed at his voice. Just a fraction, but enough to set off every alarm bell in my head. You don't spend decades reading structural problems without learning to spot human ones too. Just checking on Emily, I said, easing toward the door. Sometimes the smartest move in construction is stepping back to assess the whole structure. Think I left my phone in the truck. The spring air hit my face as I stepped onto the porch, and I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My truck sat in the driveway, solid and familiar as an old friend. I leaned against its warm hood, pulling out my phone while my mind raced through options. Here's the thing about loyalty. It's not just about standing by people. It's about standing by what's right. Like when you spot a cracked foundation. Sure, the homeowner might not want to hear it, might even get angry you brought it up. But keeping quiet? That's not loyalty. That's negligence. The keypad glowed up at me, waiting. My finger hovered over the numbers. Calling 911 would detonate everything. Family gatherings, holiday dinners, my sister's trust. But not calling. That meant betting Emily's safety on a hunch that things would improve on their own. The kind of bet no kid should have to pay for. I thought about my own tools, each one designed to fix specific problems. Sometimes the heaviest tool is the right one, even when you wish you had a gentler option. Taking a deep breath, I punched in the numbers. 911. Simple as hanging a door. Complicated as rebuilding a life. The phone felt heavy as I lifted it to my ear, each ring echoing like a hammer strike. 911. What's your emergency? The operator's voice came through clear and professional. No turning back now. Just facts. Clean and straight as a level line. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sidewalk, while I watched the patrol car's blue and white lights flash against my sister's siding. The female officer, Martinez according to her nameplate, tapped at her tablet with the kind of efficiency that said she'd already made up her mind. Looks like a domestic dispute, she said, glancing between Rachel and me. Family tensions can run high, but let's all cool down and handle this like adults. You ever notice how some words just drain the urgency right out of a situation? Domestic dispute. Like we were arguing over borrowed lawn tools or property lines instead of a child's safety. My jaw clenched so tight I could hear my teeth grinding. Through the screen door, Emily stood frozen in the foyer, her thumb firmly planted in her mouth, something she hadn't done in months. That stuffed rabbit, missing one button eye and threadbare from love, pressed tight against her chest like armor. The sight hit me like a punch to the gut. Back when she was 3, I'd spent hours in my workshop carefully stitching that eye back on, determined to be the kind of uncle who fixed things. It was a cooking accident, Rachel repeated for what felt like the 100th time, each word sharp as breaking glass. My brother's making something out of nothing. Her voice carried that brittle certainty people use when they're trying to convince themselves as much as others. Officer Martinez nodded. already turning toward her car. Just keep the peace, folks. If there are custody concerns, take them through proper channels. Custody? I hadn't said a word about custody, but that's how they saw it. Just another family power grab wrapped in fake concern. The patrol car pulled away, leaving nothing but exhaust and disappointment hanging in the air. My phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. The family group chat was lighting up like a Christmas tree, but these weren't holiday greetings. Who do you think you are calling the cops on your own sister? That was Cousin Dave. Always knew you were jealous of Rachel's life. Now we see how far you'll go. Aunt Susan, who hadn't worked a day in her life, suddenly an expert on my motivations. Betting he wants custody. Probably thinks there's money in it. That from Tommy, who still owed me for 3 jobs I'd done at cost. The messages kept coming, each one twisting the knife deeper. Real men mind their own business, Aunt Margaret declared, as if protecting a child wasn't every adult's business. I typed out one response. Protecting a child is my business. Then I muted the chat. Sometimes silence is the only way to keep your dignity intact. You can't reason with people who've already written the script and cast you as the villain. The drive home felt longer than usual. Each familiar landmark, a reminder that my world had shifted in ways I couldn't control. My workshop welcomed me with its familiar smell of sawdust and machine oil. Tools lined the pegboard in perfect order. Chisels, planes, hammers, each one a testament to precision and purpose. They were my witnesses, but witnesses who couldn't testify to what really mattered. Sinking into my old office chair, I ran a hand over my face. The real fight was just beginning, and it wouldn't happen in living rooms or on front porches. It would play out in offices with fluorescent lights and people who measured truth in documents and evidence, not family loyalty. My phone vibrated again. I almost ignored it. But the number wasn't one I recognized. Not family, not a client. Something new was coming, and I had no idea if it would be a lifeline or another weight trying to drag me under. The unfamiliar number belonged to Sarah Chen from Child Protective Services. Her voice carried that measured tone professionals use when they're about to change your life. Mr. Carver, we received the police report from Saturday's incident. I'd like to schedule an initial interview. How's tomorrow at 9? I gripped the phone tighter. Monday works. Keep it simple, I told myself. Every word matters now. Bring any documentation you have regarding the incident. She paused. And Mr. Carver, come prepared to be specific. After we hung up, I sat in my workshop staring at a blank notepad. The smell of fresh-cut pine usually centered me, but tonight it just reminded me of all the family projects I might never build again. I picked up a pencil and started writing. You know how time gets fuzzy when you're trying to remember details? But some moments stick like splinters, sharp and exact. I wrote down everything from Saturday, picking Emily up at 10:15, the chocolate ice cream cone at Jerry's around 10:45, noticing the burn at 11:03 when I helped her into the booster seat. Her exact words, it was cooking, the way she wouldn't look up from the floor mat. The family group chat kept lighting up my phone. Hope you've got good lawyers, Cousin Dave wrote. Because we do. Tommy chimed in with some creative suggestions about where I could stick my concerns. I muted them all and kept writing. Around midnight, I had a clean timeline printed and labeled in a fresh manila folder. Facts, not feelings. Observable details, not assumptions. I rehearsed answers out loud to my empty workshop, making sure every response stayed anchored to what I'd seen with my own eyes. Rachel's boyfriend, Steve, posted a photo Sunday afternoon. Him at the grill, that smirk on his face like he knew something I didn't. The caption read, "Perfect family Sunday with my favorites." The timestamp showed 2:47 p.m. I printed that too. Something about his confidence made my stomach turn. Monday morning, I pulled into the CPS parking lot 20 minutes early, paper cup of coffee cooling in my hand. The building looked like any other government office. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, and that particular smell of industrial carpet cleaner trying to mask decades of worry. Sarah Chen's office had one small window and walls covered in child safety posters. She gestured to a chair that had seen better days, opened a fresh file, and looked at me with eyes that had heard every possible story. Tell me what you observed, Mr. Carver. Just the facts. I walked her through Saturday's timeline, pointing to specific details and times. When I described the burn's edges, she nodded slightly. When I mentioned Emily's reaction, she made a note. Here's where we stand, she said after I finished. Your sister maintains it was an accident while cooking. Without additional evidence that contradicts her explanation, we can't escalate the investigation. She folded her hands on the desk. You have 7 days to provide corroborating proof. Otherwise, the case will be marked as unsubstantiated. 7 days. The words hit like a hammer to the chest. What kind of proof? Medical records, photographs, witness statements, anything that shows a pattern or contradicts the cooking accident story. She leaned forward. Mr. Carver, I need you to understand. Suspicion isn't enough. We need facts. I nodded, already feeling time slipping away. Every minute I sat there was a minute not spent finding evidence. Every hour of hesitation was an hour Emily might need help. 7 days, I repeated, standing up. I understand. Walking out of that fluorescent-lit building into the morning sun. I felt the weight of the deadline pressing down. My phone buzzed. An email notification. The subject line from Johnson Construction, one of my biggest clients, started with "Upcoming start date" and cut off. I opened it, and there it was in black and white. Cancellation of contract. My hands weren't quite steady as I lowered the phone. The first domino had fallen, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. Back in my workshop, I pulled up the spreadsheets on my laptop. Funny how numbers that used to show steady growth now looked like a countdown to disaster. 3 big jobs scheduled for next month. The Henderson kitchen remodel, Wilson's deck expansion, and that custom built-in for the Patels. I had to know if they were still solid. First call went straight to voicemail. "Hi, Mrs. Henderson. Just checking in about the start date." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Second call, same story. The Wilsons weren't picking up either. Mr. Patel answered on the third ring. There was this awkward pause before he spoke, like he was choosing his words carefully. "Michael, we heard things about your situation." My stomach dropped. "You ever notice how reputation works? Takes years to build, minutes to burn down. What kind of things exactly?" I kept my tone professional, but my free hand was gripping the edge of my workbench. "Listen, we value your work, but with all this family drama," he cleared his throat, "maybe it's best if we postpone indefinitely." Before I could respond, another email notification popped up. The Hendersons. Subject line: contract termination. Below that, the Wilsons. Project cancellation. Just like that. 15 years of showing up on time, staying on budget, leaving job sites cleaner than I found them. All of it vaporized because my family decided truth was negotiable. Remember that smell of fresh sawdust and coffee that used to start my mornings? Now all I could smell was trouble. I opened my checking account app. The numbers stared back like a failing grade. Barely enough to cover this month's payroll if nothing else went wrong. And everything was going wrong. You know what's worse than watching your business crumble? Knowing a 5-year-old might be hurting while you're counting pennies. I grabbed a shopping bag and headed to Walgreens. Filled it with the gentlest burn cream they had, some cartoon bandages, cocoa butter for later healing, and a princess coloring book. Nothing that could be called interference, just an uncle's care package. The drive to Rachel's place felt different now. Every house I passed had windows like eyes, wondering if I was the monster my family painted me to be. Steve's truck was in the driveway, of course. He opened the door before I could knock, filling the frame with that linebacker build he loved to remind people about. The grin on his face was an invitation to throw the first punch. Well, the concerned uncle. He draped his arm across the doorframe. "Come to cause more trouble?" I held up the Walgreens bag. "Just dropping off some supplies for Emily." "Supplies?" His grin widened. "For a cooking accident that's already healing?" How thoughtful. Behind him I caught a glimpse of Emily peeking around the corner. That stuffed rabbit still clutched tight. 7 days. The clock in my head wouldn't stop ticking. "It's a care package," I said evenly. "That's all." "Sure it is." He took the bag, made a show of checking inside. "We'll make sure she gets it." Eventually, the door closed in my face. Standing there on that porch, I realized something. Pride was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. Not with Emily's safety on the line. I needed someone who could read burns the way I read wood grain. Someone who knew the difference between accident and intent. Back in my truck, I scrolled through my contacts. Past the clients who wouldn't return calls. Past the family members who'd turned their backs. Then I stopped on one name. Mark Sullivan. 25 years of friendship, and not once had he let opinion cloud fact. 3 tours as a firefighter. Now an instructor at the academy. If anyone could tell truth from fiction in this mess, it was Mark. I hit dial before doubt could stop me. The phone rang once, twice. "Hey, Michael." Mark's familiar gravel voice answered. "Been a while." The firehouse kitchen looked exactly like you'd expect. Well-worn, but spotless. That mix of rubber hose and day-old coffee hit my nose the second I walked in. Mark was already there. His turnout gear hung nearby like a sentinel. "Coffee?" he asked, reaching for a mug without waiting for my answer. That was Mark, always reading people before they spoke. Thanks. I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic. Remember when we used to solve the world's problems over these cups in high school? He smiled, crow's feet deepening around eyes that had seen too much. Yeah, except now we're actually qualified to solve some of them. I laid it out for him. Emily's burn, Rachel's story, the family's reaction, CPS's deadline. Mark didn't interrupt once, just listened with that steady focus he brought to every emergency. You know the type. The guy you want around when everything's falling apart. When I finished, he set his mug down carefully. Burns tell stories, Michael. Every single one of them. The shape, the depth, the pattern, they're like fingerprints of what really happened. That's what I need, I said, leaning forward. How to prove what I'm seeing. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through some photos. First thing, you need clear shots. Perpendicular to the injury. Good lighting. Always include a ruler for scale. He showed me example after example, explaining what each detail meant. See these edges? He pointed to one photo. Sharp lines mean direct contact. Splashes look different. Cooking accidents have their own signature, usually multiple small spots, not single concentrated burns. My shoulders slumped. What if I'm wrong, Mark? What if I'm seeing monsters where there aren't any? He set the phone down and looked me straight in the eye. Every father I know, and I count uncles in that group, doubts themselves until the moment they have to act. Then they just do what needs doing. The truth of that settled into my bones. Made me think of my own father. How he never hesitated when family needed him. So what's the play? I asked. Do this right, Mark said. Work with CPS, get supervised access, document everything professionally. No ambush photos or secret recordings. That'll just hurt your credibility. I pulled out my notebook. What exactly do I need? Good camera. Ruler. Detailed notes about scab formation and healing progress. And stick to facts. What you observe, not what you think happened. He tapped the table for emphasis. If the evidence shows what you suspect, I'll provide a sworn statement about burn characteristics. You do that? For a friend I've known since 10th grade? For a kid who might be hurting? Try and stop me. Right there. That's why I'd called Mark. Some people wrap themselves in drama. Others just see what needs doing and do it. I pulled out my phone and drafted an email to the CPS caseworker, requesting supervised documentation time. Kept it professional, focused on proper procedure. The response came faster than I expected. A slot for tomorrow morning. Camera, I muttered, making a list. Ruler, notepad, and a script, Mark added. Write down exactly what you'll say. No leading questions, nothing that could be seen as coaching. Just simple stuff like, can you show me where it hurts? I was adding that to my notes when my phone buzzed. A text from my cousin David. Stop now or lose everyone. Mark saw my expression change. Family pushing back? Yeah. I showed him the message. He nodded slowly. You know what we say about fires? They get bigger while people decide whether to call 911. He stood up, stretched. Want my advice? You've already pulled the alarm. Now follow through. Heading home, I laid everything out on my workbench. Camera, steel ruler, fresh notebook, and a single sheet of paper with simple, clear questions. Next to it all, I set my calendar with that 7-day deadline circled in red. The CPS office smelled like fresh paint and old coffee. Emily sat in a chair too big for her, feet dangling, while the caseworker explained we'd take some pictures of her arm, just like at the doctor's. My hands shook a bit, setting up the camera. Crazy how the smallest things can feel massive when a child's watching. Remember being a kid? How grown-ups seem to know exactly what they were doing? Let me tell you, we're all just hoping we get it right. Can you show me where it hurts, sweetheart? I kept my voice steady, just like Mark taught me. Emily rolled up her sleeve, careful as a surgeon. The burn looked angry against her. Pale skin, healing but still raw enough to make my teeth clench. I'm going to put this ruler next to it, okay? Just like measuring in art class. She nodded, watching the steel ruler with curious eyes. Click, click, click. Each photo felt like evidence and accusation rolled into one. The elongated edge was too clean, too precise. No chaotic splatter like you'd get from hot oil, no random pattern like a pot bump would leave. Just one clear, deliberate mark. Later that afternoon, I met Mark at his kitchen table. Photos spread out like cards in a losing hand. He studied them through reading glasses, mouth set in a grim line. This isn't cooking, Michael. See this uniform width? The clean border? This came from direct contact with something heated, and held there. My stomach turned to concrete. You're sure? 20 years of burn investigation, sure. He tapped one photo. I'll put it in writing for CPS. Back home, I built my timeline like I was framing a house. Measure twice, nail once. Rachel claimed the accident happened Tuesday morning, but Emily's daycare photos from Monday already showed her favoring that arm. The dates didn't line up, just like the burn pattern didn't match the story. I saved everything to a fresh USB drive, labeled it with today's date, and locked it in my fireproof safe. Evidence was evidence, whether anyone wanted to see it or not. But man, the family, they weren't letting up. Aunt Susan posted about attention seekers who need therapy. Cousin David shared some article about male drama and control issues. Each notification felt like a paper cut. Then, Rachel posted her masterstroke, a perfect family dinner photo. Emily, smiling. Her boyfriend, arm around Rachel's waist. Caption, "Nothing better than home-cooked meals with my love's hearts." I stared at my dwindling bank balance. 3 more contracts canceled yesterday. Payroll was 2 weeks away, and the math wasn't adding up. Good men, guys who'd stuck with me through thick and thin, were counting on those checks. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. The email to CPS was already drafted. After careful consideration, I wish to withdraw my concerns. Delete. Type. Delete again. The caseworker had called, asking me to come in. Said Emily wanted to use the bathroom during her supervised visit. I figured it was just procedure stuff. Maybe more paperwork. I sat in that sterile office, breathing recycled air, watching the second hand tick on a cheap wall clock. Emily came back, clutching that stuffed rabbit she never left home without. She stood next to my chair, so small against the government-grade furniture. Then she tugged my sleeve, the way she did when she wanted to whisper a secret. I leaned down, expecting something about ice cream or maybe a new toy. Her voice was barely there, like a leaf scratching concrete. Danny burned me because I spilled his coffee. The air left the room. My vision tunneled to a pinpoint. Danny. Rachel's boyfriend. Not an accident. Not Rachel. Danny. Emily's hand was still on my sleeve, trusting me with a truth that could blow our whole family apart. Sometimes the weight of a child's whisper can crush a man's world. And sometimes that's exactly what needs to happen. I'd heard somewhere that truth hits you twice. Once when you learn it, and again when you decide what to do about it. Emily's whispered confession about Danny still rang in my ears as I stepped out of that government building into afternoon sunlight that felt too bright, too normal for what had just happened. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. Mark picked up on the second ring. "The burn pattern," I said, without preamble. "If someone held a coffee mug against her arm, deliberate contact." Mark's voice hardened. "The uniform edge we saw? Perfect match for a ceramic rim. Let me guess. Boyfriend? Danny." The name tasted like battery acid. She just told the caseworker, "Get me everything you've got. Photos, timeline, every contradicting statement they made. I'll write up my analysis tonight." You know those moments when your whole world narrows to one clear path? When I hung up, my contractor's brain kicked in. The one that breaks big jobs into precise, manageable steps. I drove straight to my office, powered up the computer, and started building the case like I was assembling a cabinet where every joint had to be perfect. First, the photos, arranged chronologically with timestamps and ruler measurements. Then, Mark's professional assessment linking the wound characteristics to intentional application, the kind of evidence courts respect. I created a timeline tracking every shifting explanation. Rachel's cooking accident claim versus daycare photos, showing Emily favoring that arm a day earlier. Danny's social media posts bragging about family breakfast when school records showed Emily absent that morning. No speculation, no emotion, just facts laid out clean as level boards. I must have triple-checked that report package because in this game, one sloppy detail could sink the whole thing. The file went to CPS at 6:43 p.m. I remember the timestamp because I stared at that send button for a full minute before clicking. Their response hit my inbox faster than any government agency I'd ever dealt with. They wanted to know my availability for coordinated intervention with law enforcement personnel. My reply was simple: the sooner the better. We're on day 5 of 7. The caseworker called within minutes. "Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. We'll have officers present and a forensic interviewer for Emily. Can you be there?" "I'll be there at 7:30. Early is on time in my book, especially when it matters this much. I printed fresh copies of everything. One for CPS, one for police, one for my records. Each page went into a crisp manila folder, labeled and dated. You don't spend 20 years in contracting without learning the value of clean documentation. Remember that satisfaction of finishing a project? That moment when all the sawdust is swept up, tools are cleaned and stored. And you know you've built something, right? This wasn't like that. This was like wiring a house where one crossed wire could start a fire. I laid out my clothes for morning. Clean work shirt, pressed jeans, steel toes polished. Professional, but practical. The kind of outfit that says you take things seriously without trying to impress anyone. The phone kept lighting up with family messages. I silenced it, put it face down on the nightstand. Whatever storm was coming, it could wait till 8 a.m. Set 2 alarms, 6 and 6:15. Checked them 3 times. Checked the folders again. Straightened them on the kitchen counter where I couldn't miss them. Then came the waiting. You ever notice how time moves different at night? How minutes stretch like rubber bands when you're staring at darkness? I watched shadows crawl across my ceiling, counting hours backward from 8 o'clock, measuring them against what this morning would mean for Emily. The sky started bleeding gray through my blinds. Dawn comes, whether you sleep or not. I pulled up at 7:50 a.m. sharp, parking my truck around the corner where Rachel's windows couldn't spot me. 2 unmarked cars and a patrol unit sat idle along the curb, their occupants conferring in tight clusters on the sidewalk. The morning sun hadn't burned off the dew yet, and my boots left dark prints on the concrete as I walked up. Ever notice how the air feels different before something big happens? Like that heaviness right before a summer storm breaks? That's what it was like watching those officers and CPS workers trading notes in low voices. The caseworker, Sarah Thompson, according to her badge, nodded as I approached. Mr. Carver. Right on time. A detective whose nameplate read Martinez pulled me aside, speaking in that clipped, efficient way cops have when they're working. We've reviewed the evidence package, solid documentation. The burn analysis from your firefighter friend, particularly helpful. I thought about those mornings in my shop, measuring twice, cutting once. How attention to detail wasn't just about pride. It was about getting things right when they mattered. Mark knows his stuff. The photos don't lie. The forensic interviewer, a calm-faced woman in her 50s, checked her watch. 8 o'clock. Shall we? You know that moment when you're about to make the first cut on an expensive piece of wood? That's what it felt like, watching them approach. Rachel's front door. No going back now. The knock echoed like a hammer strike. Rachel opened up wearing what I called her company smile, the one she'd practiced since high school when she wanted to charm teachers. That smile crumpled fast when badges came up and introductions rolled out. We need to speak with Emily, the interviewer said, gentle but firm. Danny materialized behind Rachel, all 6 feet of him trying to fill the doorframe. What's this about? His voice had that oily smoothness that always set my teeth on edge. Detective Martinez kept it simple. Can you explain Emily's burn injury from last week? Danny's story came out like badly joined lumber, pieces that didn't quite fit. Like we told everyone, she bumped the stove Tuesday morning while I was making breakfast. Tuesday? Martinez checked his notes. The school records show Emily was absent Monday, not Tuesday. And these photos are dated Sunday. The change in Danny's face. That's something I'll remember. Like watching a mask crack right down the middle. The interviewer gave a slight nod, and Martinez stepped forward, already reaching for his cuffs. Sir, please turn around and place your hands behind your back. You're kidding me, Danny started. But Martinez just kept going in that same steady tone. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. The cuffs made that distinct double-click sound, the kind that means something's locked down tight and proper. Movement caught my eye. Curtains twitching in windows across the street. Faces peeking out of doorways. In a neighborhood like this, news travels faster than sawdust in a windstorm. Rachel stood frozen on her welcome mat, staring at me like she was seeing a stranger. Then her lips moved, forming my name like it was poison she needed to spit out. 25 years of shared history dissolved in that single moment. Danny didn't resist as they walked him to the patrol car. Probably thought he could still talk his way out. Guys like him usually do. The car door thumped shut with a solid finality that sent a neighbor's dog barking. Rachel's voice cut through the morning air, sharp as a blade hitting a knot in wood. You ruined our family. She spat each word like she was driving nails. You happy now? Everyone watching us fall apart? The street was dead quiet, except for that dog still barking somewhere. Every curtained window, every cracked door held someone taking in the show. Tomorrow's gossip was being written right here on this dewy suburban sidewalk, and Rachel knew it. I thought about Emily's small voice saying, for spilling. Thought about the perfect circular burn that would leave a scar. Some things matter more than keeping peace. The patrol car pulled away, carrying Danny toward whatever justice the system would deal him. Rachel's words hung in the air between us, heavy as storm clouds about to break. I followed the CPS team back to their office, one of those beige government buildings where life-changing paperwork gets filed away in endless drawers. The fluorescent lights made everything feel temporary and permanent at the same time. Kind of like how sawdust settles on everything in my shop, but never quite feels like it belongs there. Ms. Rodriguez, my caseworker, spread out forms across her desk. We'll need your signature here, and initial these pages. Her pen tapped each spot with the precision of someone who'd done this too many times. This confirms your statement about Emily's disclosure and the photographic evidence. You ever notice how some moments feel heavier than others? Like when you're setting a cornerstone that'll carry the weight of everything above it? That's what it felt like, signing those papers. What happens now? I asked, flexing my hand after the last signature. We're implementing an immediate safety plan for Emily. Ms. Rodriguez pulled out another folder. Given the circumstances and your sister's potential neglect findings, we're looking at temporary placement with a qualified relative. She paused, studying me. Would you be willing to be considered? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Harrison Construction, one of my biggest clients, the kind that keeps small contractors afloat through lean times. The message was simple. Status update needed. Proceed with build or pause. My throat tightened. 15 years I'd been building custom cabinets for their high-end homes. One whisper of instability could sink that relationship faster than bad lumber warps in rain. Mr. Carver? Ms. Rodriguez was waiting. Sorry, I said, pocketing the phone. About Emily. Yes, whatever she needs. But I need to understand exactly what we're looking at here. She laid it out clean and straight, like a good blueprint should be. Child interviews, counseling, court dates, possible charges against Rachel for failure to protect. The machinery of justice grinding into motion, slow but unstoppable. Walking out, I stopped in the hallway to answer Harrison. Wrote and rewrote that message 4 times before settling on due process underway. All documentation on file with authorities confirms initial concerns. Happy to discuss details in person. Send. My phone pinged again. The neighborhood chat group this time. Amazing how fast truth travels when it's got witnesses. Police at the miner's house this morning. Danny arrested. Something about the little girl. No more whispers about my motives now. Just facts, spreading like ripples in still water. The shop was quiet when I got back. That good kind of quiet that usually means honest work and simple problems. I ran my fingers along my grandfather's wooden plane, smooth from decades of use. The weight of it in my hand reminded me of simpler days, when the biggest challenge was getting a joint to fit just right. Remember when I said tools don't lie? They don't comfort you either. But there's something about their solid presence that helps steady a shaken mind. Another buzz from my phone. Harrison again. We decide tomorrow after the official update. Tomorrow. That word sat heavy as a full lumber rack. I started my nightly routine. Wiping down tools, checking edges, returning everything to its proper place. Some folks might call it obsessive, but I've always found order helps clear the head. Each tool clicking into its spot was like setting another thought right. The shop lights threw long shadows as I worked my way through the space. Clamps lined up like soldiers. Chisels nested in their leather roll. Saw blades gleaming dull silver in their wall-mounted rack. Last check done, I reached for the main switch. The darkness that followed felt like more than just the absence of light. It felt like the space between action and consequence, between truth told and truth believed. Standing there in my darkened shop, I thought about Emily's small fingers tracing the birdhouse plans we'd drawn up together last month. That project would have to wait. Tonight was for waiting of a different kind. I woke up to my phone's soft buzz at 5:47 a.m. Couldn't remember the last time I'd slept more than 4 hours straight. The CPS email sat there like a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. Protective placement confirmed. Expert testimony from Fire Captain Mark Reynolds noted and filed. Emergency hearing scheduled. My hands stopped shaking for the first time in days. I scrolled through the rest. Procedures, guidelines, schedules. The kind of bureaucratic language that usually makes my eyes glaze over, but now read like poetry. The neighborhood chat was already humming. Not with congratulations or backpats, thank God for that, but with the kind of clear-eyed understanding that comes after shock wears off. Always posting those perfect family photos, someone wrote. While that poor child. Remember Rachel's Christmas party? How Emily wouldn't leave her room? All those spa weekends and wine tastings. Meanwhile, the truth has a way of rewriting history, showing you all the signs you missed in plain sight. Rachel's carefully curated social media empire was crumbling post by post. Her tennis group chat went silent. Book club invites vanished. Even her yearly hosting of the neighborhood cookie exchange got quietly reassigned. Some comments still dripped poison. She just wanted what was best for her daughter. Single mothers have it hard. But those voices got shouted down pretty quick. Funny how fast people choose sides when the truth isn't hiding anymore. My phone rang at 8:30 sharp. Harrison Construction. Mike. Jack Harrison's voice was granite solid as always. Got the police report summary this morning? My throat tried to close up. Jack, let me finish. You know what matters to me more than anything in this business? Quality work, I said automatically. Integrity, he corrected. 20 years building custom homes, you learn to spot the real thing. That contract's yours if you still want it. The pressure in my chest eased like someone had opened a valve. I want it. Good. Send me the updated timeline when you're ready. And Mike? You did right. I hung up and just breathed for a minute. Opened my work calendar. Those empty white squares started filling with black ink again. 3 cabinet installations. A full kitchen remodel. Life returning. One job at a time. I texted Mark. Owe you more than thanks. BBQ this weekend? The good stuff from Pete's Smoke Pit. His reply came quick. Make it double portions. Haven't slept this good in days. Join the club, brother. The CPS guidelines for visiting Emily landed in my inbox. 3 pages of do's and don'ts, all focused on keeping things light and positive. No testimony, no questions about that morning. Just uncle and niece time. I could work with that. I swung by Anderson's Hardware on my way to the shop. Bill Anderson himself was at the counter, reading glasses perched on his nose. Need some cedar, I said. 1/4 inch. And wood glue. Those small finish nails, too. He nodded, not asking questions. But as he wrapped up the boards, he cleared his throat. Heard about what went down. My Annie. She's in Emily's class. Just wanted to say. I waved him off. Some things don't need words. The workshop air held that perfect morning mix of sawdust and possibility. I swept a clean space on my main bench, laid out the cedar pieces. Emily had been fascinated by the birdhouse plans we'd sketched. Simple angles, nothing fancy. Just the kind of project that lets young hands learn trust in tools again. The wood was smooth under my palm as I arranged it. Good cedar has a smell like sunshine trapped in amber. Brings back memories of my own uncle's shop, where I first learned that careful hands can build more than just boxes. The space felt right. Ready. Sometimes the best healing comes from the quiet sound of hammer meeting nail, one careful tap at a time. My phone lit up with another work request. The calendar was filling, piece by piece, like a house coming together from foundation to roof. Turns out integrity's got better structural strength than lies, every time. You ever notice how a workshop feels different early morning? There's this moment, just as the sun starts climbing, when everything's possibility and promise. That Saturday, I got there extra early, laying out the tools Emily would need. Nothing too sharp. Nothing that could startle. Just the basics. Sandpaper, small hammer, the finishing nails we'd carefully counted out. When the CPS worker's car pulled up, I had to remind myself to breathe normal. Emily hopped out, clutching her stuffed rabbit, eyes darting around like she wasn't sure what was allowed anymore. But the minute that cedar scent hit her, man, you should have seen her face light up. Uncle Mike, it smells like Christmas trees. I couldn't help grinning. That's cedar for you, kiddo. Nature's air freshener. I pulled up the kid-sized stool I'd grabbed from storage. Want to learn how to make a house for birds? She nodded so hard her pigtails bounced. The CPS worker settled into the chair by the door, clipboard ready but trying to fade into the background. Fair enough. First rule of woodworking, I said, picking up a piece of sandpaper. We make everything smooth as silk. Know why? Emily shook her head. Because we don't want any hidden splinters surprising anybody. I guided her small hand over the wood. Feel that rough spot? We're gonna make it disappear. You know what gets me? How quick kids bounce back when they feel safe. Within minutes, she was sanding away, tongue stuck out in concentration, totally focused on getting every inch perfect. Just like her uncle, if I do say so myself. Good job, sweetheart. Now for the fun part. I held up a nail. This little guy needs a home in that wood. Want to help him find it? She giggled. God. When was the last time I'd heard that sound? I showed her how to hold the hammer, my hand steady over hers. Gentle taps at first, I explained. Like knocking on a door. Then when it started straight, we drove it home together. That nail went in true as an arrow. While we worked, my phone kept buzzing. News travels fast in small towns. Rachel's boyfriend was facing serious charges, the kind that make other inmates real unfriendly. And Rachel? Well, the court of public opinion works faster than any judge. Her carefully built social castle was crumbling brick by brick. The morning crowd at Pete's Diner had already shifted tables when she came in for coffee. The church prayer chain, which she'd run for 5 years, got reorganized without her. Folks have long memories when it comes to choosing silence over a child's safety. But in my workshop, none of that existed. Just me and Emily, following our blueprint, measuring twice and cutting once. Though honestly, I'd done the cutting prep work earlier. Some lessons can wait. See how these pieces fit together? I showed her the joints. That's called joinery. When you do it right, it's stronger than any glue or nail. Emily ran her fingers over the connections. Like a puzzle? Exactly like a puzzle. And you know what? Life's kind of the same way. When things fit true, they hold together no matter what. The roof was the last piece. I let her drive that final nail, both of us beaming when it sank perfect and flush. Her smile then. It hit me right in the chest. No fear, no flinching. Just pure pride in making something good. I lifted the birdhouse up, checking it with my contractor's eye. The joints were solid. The angles true. Emily had sanded those edges smooth as glass. Not bad for a first project. Ready to hang it up? I asked. She nodded, clutching her rabbit tight as I mounted it on the hook I'd prepared, right where the morning sun would catch it. It hung straight and true, just like it should. Looking at that little cedar house, catching Emily's proud grin, I knew what needed saying. Simple truth, like simple joinery, works best. Protecting truth is worth every enemy made, I said, and meant every word.